Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Carlotta. Welcome to my home in Denver. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name is Carlotta. I'm an interior stylist, and we are in my home in Denver, Colorado. When we first walked into the house, we absolutely fell in love with it. It was actually marketed as a fixer-upper because it has all the original tiling in the bathroom. The kitchen hadn't been renovated, and it was owned by the same family since 1957. So the people who were selling the house were actually the kids who grew up in this house. There were 4 of them. And so they were all in their 50s and 60s at the time. And they obviously loved this home. It was their family home. And so they told us that we could write a love letter, as it's called, kind of introducing ourselves, what we would want to do with the house. And we were bidding against a contractor who wanted to flip the house basically and paint it, gut it, get rid of the paneling, which was heartbreaking for us because we really love this style as it is. So we ended up writing a letter to the children, and we just introduced ourselves, say that we were looking to start a family and how we just wanted to make a few small improvements, and we didn't get the house. And our realtor told us, sorry, they went with the contractor because they were offering a little bit more money. And then 2 days later, we got a phone call from our realtor, and she said the kids had a heart-to-heart and they decided to change the offer and give it to us instead. So we were obviously ecstatic, and yeah, the rest is history. So we're here in the foyer. A lot of these pieces of art are either thrifted or they're from my grandparents. This is from my grandmother. I wish I knew the origin of it, but it reminds me of her, and I love hanging little rugs and textiles as art pieces. This is a famous piece by Picasso. It is definitely a print, but it was one of my grandmother's favorites. So when I saw it at an estate sale a few years ago, I had to snatch it up. And then over here, this painting of Shiprock was actually left by the previous owners. And it has only ever been, that I know of, hung in this space. So it's special to me that that little vestige of them is still here. And I think it fits in perfectly with the rest of our furnishings. Same with this little workbench. They actually left it in the basement, and it's this perfect little entry table. Again, I'm mentioning a lot about my grandparents. This was also my grandmother's, and it was a rum bottle, I believe, and she had it wired to be a lamp. It was not in great shape when I got it, so I spray painted it again, found this cute little shade for it, and now it's one of my favorite pieces in the house. This rug is also from an estate sale. I love just collecting pieces as I go. A lot of times when I buy something at an estate sale, I don't actually know where it's gonna live in my house or if I'm gonna sell it or what I'm gonna do with it. But this one came home with me, and I love it in the entryway. Moving on into the living room, we have 2 steps down. I love that this is sunken. When we were house shopping, I have always loved sunken living rooms, but I didn't dare tell my realtor that we wanted a house with a sunken living room because houses were so hard to come by. So it just felt so serendipitous to walk in the front door for the first time and come down here and the living room was sunken. It's such a small thing, but it felt like I was coming home. So here, this is another piece that I got at an estate sale. This is beautiful walnut credenza, and I actually bought this piece to sell, but my husband, who's a woodworker, he came with me to the estate sale to pick it up, and it was just, we were both blown away by how beautiful it was. It had been covered in dust, and it was sitting in somebody's house for years and years and years, but it just had to live with us, so I love this piece. We don't have a TV up here in the living room. We have an area downstairs in the basement where we watch TV, but I actually kind of like it. We listen to records a lot in the evenings, especially in the winter when we're hanging out here. And yeah, it's just been like a fun little ritual in the evening when it's getting dark so early to make a drink, come down here and listen to a record. So when I first came and saw the house, like I said, I immediately fell in love with it, but it is a very long space. It probably took me 2 years of living in the house before I came up with a furniture arrangement that I felt happy with. Homes take a long time to decorate. It's not realistic to just be able to go to, a big furniture store and just buy everything in one fell swoop. For one, that's expensive, and two, it's just not gonna have the same amount of character as like collecting pieces over time. So this living room came together very much in bits and pieces, and I actually asked my followers on TikTok a couple years ago because I was just really struggling with the layout of this living room, and they came through. I got a new couch, and we kind of like divided things up to a main living area, but it is tricky in here because we have a fireplace as a focal point, and we also have windows, and so there's definitely this like push and pull that we had to figure out. But again, I think it's an ever-evolving process. I don't think a house is ever done, but I'm happy with how it's turned out for now. So we have this great credenza that I love, and then this art piece I found at a thrift store, and at first I looked at it and I was like, is this like a little wacky for our space? But that's when I knew that it was actually the right purchase. I love things that are just like are a little bit quirky, and I think that's something that will really add personality to your home, is if you have this gut reaction to be like, yes, I love this, but it's also a little bit like weird. That's my sweet spot, in my opinion. So love that there. Moving on here, estate sales, I'm like a walking ad for estate sales here, but estate sales are great for getting plants. So I got this Madagascar dragon tree, I think that's what it's called. And I love the kind of like Dr. Seuss playfulness that it adds to this area. This love seat is actually one of the only new items that I purchased for the space. But I like it because it doesn't necessarily scream super new. I think I got it off of Wayfair. And yeah, I like the mid-century lines and the tones, and it kind of anchored in this spot. Moving over here, we have a wood-burning fireplace, which I love. It's just so cozy and nostalgic. And again, when we're listening to our records and drinking our drinks, it's super fun to have a fire going. My husband used to live in Canada for a while, and he made this beautiful walnut frame. So I love displaying it up here. This is another piece that I got at a thrift store, but it kind of reminded me of this one spot in this little town where my mom grew up in Germany. It's this little town called Techte, and my grandparents still live there. Most of my family is still there. And this is definitely not Techte. I'm not sure where it is, but like I said, when I saw it, it just kind of caught my eye, and it gave me that feeling of being at home with my grandparents. This lamp is IKEA. I love IKEA. I think it's great to pepper in with other pieces, and again, kind of creates that layered look. These curtains are actually worth mentioning. So this is called bark cloth, and this was a big mid-century design. And these curtains actually close, and so they envelop the whole living room. We don't do this very often, but it's like definitely a fun touch. And these are original to the house. They've seen some better days, but I just like can't bring myself to part with them. So those are a fun addition. Here's the other lamp that matches with the one on the credenza. Again, that was from the family, and I like a living room that just has like books. Again, that's what I'm doing a lot of here, is reading and hanging out. This couch was another Facebook Marketplace find for like $200. I love how this completes the space. It has a very low profile, but it's still very comfortable. And this piece back here, I got in an estate sale, and it's by an artist called Lee Reynolds. And Lee Reynolds was interesting. He's kind of a controversial artist. But his tenet in the 1950s was that he wanted to create real art for the average home. I thought the size of this was really great for this wall, so I snatched it up. So this is one of my favorite features of the living room. It's this built-in bookshelf nook. And again, the proportions of this living room are a bit challenging, like I mentioned, to work with. But this turned into like a really fun nook to style. For a while I was into, the rainbow organization of bookshelves, and of course there's nothing wrong with that, but like lately I've just really been into a bookshelf that is like very practical and functional. So these are all arranged alphabetically. My husband and I love to read. I love to go to the library, but we also, love to own hard copies too. And yeah, so that's this bookshelf. This chair was another piece that was left here by the previous owners, and it's kind of a rocking chair. And we didn't think much of it until we had a baby, and it's the perfect place to rock her. So that's just like a fun little element. The coffee table is another secondhand piece, and most of the things on here are secondhand as well. This little candle holder is from my grandmother's house in Germany, and I took that with me last time that I visited her, but it just makes me think of her every time that I light it, and so that's special to me. I recently picked up this little chrome piggy bank, which I thought was so fun because I also just, when you have loose change floating around the house, it's like, what do you do with that? So now I have a little piggy bank. So that was a little joy for me the other day. So moving into the dining room, the only thing that we changed in this area is the flooring. It was kind of a battered wood floor. So we ripped that up and made it cohesive with this whole area. There was ripped vinyl all throughout the rest of this area. So we just put down inexpensive travertine in here. And then this table is really cool. It's called a Skovby 33, and it's a Danish company, I believe. And the dining area is a little bit challenging here because it's not very big. And so for most of the time when it's just my husband and daughter and me, it works fine. But if we like host Christmas or, have friends over for dinner, it's not quite enough seating. So this table actually opens up and expands to seat 8 or 9 people. So that's been a fun little entertaining trick that we like to pull out when we need to. The dining area had a chandelier that was hung a bit high and it didn't quite fit in with the vibe. So this is just a simple IKEA shade. Again, I really love mixing and matching pieces, high end and low end and everything in between. And I think that really creates an interesting look. All right, so over here, this is the other side of the bookshelf, and this is one of my favorite features of this house. It's a little planter. So I just have fake plants in here because I know that there are ways that you can put real plants in there, but I was just nervous about watering and wood rotting and all that. So we have fake succulents in here for now, but it's just a fun little touch. And when people come over, they're like, oh wow, like this is so cool. So again, it's another detail of like these older homes that I just think it's so special and adds a lot of character. So this is just a little collage of, some memories that I love, some thrifted, some family. So like this is my great grandmother, the one who was part of the Hollywood Foreign Correspondents Association, and this is her giving a Golden Globe to a young Frank Sinatra, which I just thought it was so cool. This little bar area, we keep a lot of our glassware. I love glassware, so I have like a little bit of a collection, and my husband is really big into tiki drinks, like tiki cocktails. So we have a couple tiki mugs, and it's just like a fun little thing that we can do with our friends or, just with each other too. I would say the style of the house is predominantly mid-century ranch. And with the decor, I leaned mid-century to a degree, but it's really important to me to mix and match styles, so I have a lot of pieces. Actually, most of this house I furnished secondhand. We didn't have a lot of furniture when we moved into this house. Our previous home was much smaller. And so I kind of created a color scheme to go to furnish the house, but I didn't try to get too hung up on only buying mid-century pieces. So there's very much a mix. And to me, I think that reflects personality. Like there's nothing wrong with, furnishing a house purely in a mid-century style, but for me, I like to kind of, mix and match and have furniture that's like comfortable for us and practical for us as well. So moving on into here, this is the kitchen. So this is the only area that we have completely redone in the house. So the layout of the kitchen was actually pretty much the same, but for the exception of the peninsula, there was actually an island here instead. So there was a small island and then there was a walkway going through here. And it was just a little bit awkward. It just didn't flow super well. But when we were renovating, we wanted to really make sure that we kept the integrity and the natural feel of the house. So at first we had considered ripping down this wall right here. And I think that's why it's so important, if you can, to live in a house for a year, 2 years before you start renovating, because it's only when you're living in a space and interacting with it that you actually can truly make an informed decision on how you want to renovate. So I'm so glad that we did wait 1.5 years to start the renovation process here, because what we ended up with, this is completely different from what our initial impulse was. My husband did most of this work himself. We worked with a contractor for a few things, but these are actually IKEA frames. And then my husband did custom cabinet fronts out of cherry plywood. And he sanded them, he stained them, he sealed them, he built this custom bookshelf here and up there. And it was such a labor of love, but we could not be happier with how it turned out. And it actually, in my opinion, makes the house feel more cohesive than it did before. Like, it used to be the living room was so nice, and then you would come in here, there was ugly fluorescent lighting, and it just didn't feel like a welcoming place to be. But now I love it because it still feels like I'm in my living room, basically, even though I'm here in the kitchen. So one of my favorite features is this huge skylight, and this was here before we renovated, and we didn't touch a single thing. And I think it's a testament to how sometimes changing the surroundings of a certain design element completely changes the feel of it. So before, this felt a little bit dated with the track lighting, but now I feel like it really complements the kitchen, and I'm so glad that we just left it alone, and it adds a lot of really beautiful light in this space. Again, this kitchen is still a work in process. I would say that it's probably about 90% done, but I think that is very realistic for a lot of people. You work on projects, and then, like, I had a baby, and things kind of fall by the wayside, and you do things as you have time and you have money for them, and sometimes that's frustrating, but I think it's also a way to make sure you're being really intentional about the decisions that you're making in your home, and it's not just like throwing a bunch of pieces together and hoping for the best. Case in point, this faucet was something that I had just kind of chosen last minute. Like, we needed a faucet. It was just, we were under the wire of like needing to get the kitchen done, and I don't like this faucet at all, and I want to switch it out. So it's just a example of, sometimes it's okay. Obviously you need like running water, so like we had to live with this for a while, but sometimes that's just, part of the process. So over here, this is another part that's still kind of we're working on. Ultimately, there will be a cabinet that goes around this fridge. The layout of this kitchen I feel like it flows well now, but when we first saw the kitchen, the fridge was actually on this angle here on this wall, and it was just jutting out, and it was just a really awkward layout and proportion. So this fridge, we needed a 28-inch width fridge, and this is literally one of the only ones that exists. So it's a little bit small. It's definitely more of a European fridge, but at the same time, it makes sure that we're like actually eating the food that we purchase, and it's not just languishing in the fridge. So I'm excited for when this project gets completed. But for now, it is still very functional. This peninsula turned out to be one of my favorite features of the kitchen. It's just super convenient to have these bar stools, and when friends and family come over and like I'm cooking in the kitchen or my husband's making drinks, it's just so nice to have them here on this side where they're part of the conversation and hanging out, but they're also not in the way. So this was my husband's mastermind. He kind of designed all of this, and he had the idea to use the shelf to build it. And I think that it was such a smart idea because then the countertop is not just awkwardly jutting. So there's like a natural ending to it, and it kind of feels like a custom piece of furniture rather than just a peninsula with a countertop plopped in front of it with bar stools, which is what happens a lot of the time. So he built the cabinets and then just finished it with the same type of plywood that he built the cabinets out of. And then these bar stools were just a Facebook Marketplace find. And I wish I had more information on them. I can't find any sort of maker's mark or anything on them. I've looked them up on Google Images. I can't find the exact history of them, but I really love them. They're sleek and comfortable. So this has been a very fun, unexpected portion of our kitchen renovation. The other area that we completely redid was this laundry room, which is obviously not a laundry room anymore. So we turned it into a wet bar. And it was just, even though it was nice to have first floor laundry, it was awkward. The washer and dryer stuck out to about here. So you were just kind of having to like shimmy in. There was not a lot of room to like dry clothes, or, you know, things were just clothing was constantly just out on the kitchen counter because there wasn't enough room in the laundry room. The architectural integrity is still part of the kitchen, but we added this whole new space. So in here we have espresso machine, very important. We installed filtered water here, and then here we just have a bunch of extra storage, and I like having all the drinks in one area. Coffee mugs. One thing that this is part of the IKEA system, and this is not an ad for IKEA, but they have great in-drawer lighting that just makes things really special. Yeah, so I absolutely loved how this nook turned out. We decided to go bolder with the wall tile in here than in the kitchen because I felt like in a small space we could really just take advantage of that. And I'm obsessed with how this area turned out, and it was very much a bonus area and not something that we thought that we could do. So that's the wet bar. We also hid our microwave in here. A microwave is kind of like a necessary evil. In theory, I would like to say that I don't need one, but the reality is that I do. So we ended up hiding it in this little cabinet, and it works great. I was a graphic designer. That's what I got my degree in. And I worked as a graphic designer for several years, but I didn't like being in front of a screen all the time. And when we moved into this house, like I said, we didn't have a lot of furniture. So I started going to estate sales and thrift stores because, one, it's a little bit more cost effective than buying everything new, and I really loved gathering pieces that already have a story and, you know, that are already a little bit more lived in. So I just got addicted to going to estate sales when I wasn't working, and because my job as a graphic designer, I was working freelance, I was pretty flexible, so I could like go during the week. And I just couldn't stop. So even after our house was already furnished, I still would be finding these incredible pieces that I couldn't pass up. So I started buying them and reselling them on Facebook Marketplace. I would fix up the pieces a little bit. And so that was fun for a while, but it's also pretty labor intensive to go to these estate sales, haul the furniture. I mean, it's not a glamorous experience. I love the thrill of the hunt, but it's definitely like some hard work. So like I said, I started selling furniture, and then I got pregnant and I just did not have the capacity to do that anymore. So throughout this whole time, we were also renovating our kitchen, and I would say interiors are something that I've always been interested in. Just as a kid, I would, rearrange my room all the time, but it was always just something that I kind of like did on the side. I didn't think that interiors was ever something that could be like a lucrative job for me. So as I was working on this kitchen renovation, it was really exciting to me, and I started sharing on TikTok. And TikTok it just seemed like a, whatever kind of throwaway thing. But I enjoyed making videos with my background as a graphic designer. Content creation came pretty easy to me, and it just became really fun. So I started doing some private consults with people, and yeah, it just feels like really invigorating to have kind of accidentally forged this path for myself just on my own. I'm a new mom to a 7-month-old, so it's great to have that flexibility where I can primarily stay home with her and also work out of my home. And yeah, that's a very long-winded, multifaceted answer, but that's basically how I stumbled upon interiors. This little hallway leads to the garage, and so this is typically where we're coming and going on a day-to-day basis. So we have a little drop zone here, and then this bathroom was kind of an afterthought to renovate. But it turns out that when you have done a kitchen renovation, a bathroom is like very easy to just kind of like do on the side. So we needed to redo this bathroom because the faucet was leaking. It was just like this ugly kind of 80s vanity that wasn't doing much for anybody. The toilet was running and leaking, so it was kind of a no-brainer to redo. We took the travertine into here to kind of just make the whole thing cohesive. And then we just got an inexpensive console sink and a toilet, and then this mirror was actually already there. And so it's just another example of changing the context of an item can completely change your perception of it. Because before I just thought it was like dingy and, you know, a throwaway piece, but now I love it. This bathroom is kind of also another homage to our grandparents. So we have a lot of family photos and mementos, and my goal in this bathroom is to just like have everything covered in art, kind of like an Italian family restaurant vibe. So that's what I'm working on in here. This is actually a special piece. This is a note that my dad wrote his grandparents in 1967, and it's just a little thank you note for something, you know, gifts that he got for his 10th birthday, and it's just sweet and special. And I think it's funny that even in 1967, nobody could spell received properly. So it just makes me smile every time I am in here. And yeah, so that's the bathroom. And then coming back here, there's this wing of the house, and then we're gonna go into the other wing of the house. One thing I love about this house is there's a lot of storage. So there's some great coat closet, linen closets, and that's something that in my old Victorian house was not so much of a thing. So it was very much a welcome change when we moved into this house. So these bathrooms were one of the reasons why this house was marketed as a fixer-upper. So these are original to the house when it was built in 1957, and I personally absolutely love this type of tile. And I am so thankful that it was still intact because it's kind of rare to find original tile like this. A lot of times it's been, you know, renovated a couple times over. You know, it needs a little bit of love. Some of the wallpaper is peeling, like, you know, the grouting could kind of be redone, but in all, for being 60 plus years old, it's in really good shape. It has the only bathtub in the house, which is nice now that I have a daughter, so we are using this a lot more. And I just think that the details that bathrooms used to be built with, you just don't find that as much anymore. So this beautiful tile, the matching pistachio green sink and tub and toilet. And also I do want to call out the stained glass windows, which literally match the wallpaper. I'm not sure whose genius that was, but that was like one of the first things that I noticed when I walked into the house. So if I ever replace this wallpaper, I'm gonna have to search high and low to find something that's still going to match the stained glass. Again, there's also so much great storage in these bathrooms too. So behind the mirror, there's storage. There's great storage here. And that's just something that's, again, coming from a Victorian home, is just like not something that I take for granted. All right, so coming down this hallway, it's a very long hallway, and it took me a while to find the right rug for it. I think this rug is 15 inches. We could almost even go longer, but I love this pop. Hallways are kind of a challenge for me too to decorate. So I think when in doubt, going for a bold rug in a hallway is always a great choice. So we have the bathroom over here, and then over here is my office area. And I personally really love a moody, cozy vibe to work in. It kind of really helps me zero in. So again, a lot of the furniture in here is thrifted. This is another piece that was left by the previous owners. It was in the basement, and there is a matching armchair that goes with it that's in my bedroom. And I just thought it was fun to have a couch in here. My siblings made fun of me and they called it a therapist couch, but you know what? I'm all for therapy, so that's fine with me. I painted it this really dark brown. There was kind of like a rosy striped wallpaper in here, which was cute, but because there's not much natural light in here, I like to lean into that, and so I just went dark rather than trying to make this area light and bright and airy when it's not. This floor lamp, again, was an estate sale find, as was this rug, and that's what's fun for me about picking up pieces as I see them. I kind of throw them together like in a closet or in my basement, and then when I'm ready to style a space, I can kind of like shop my house and, you know, use what I have already. Same with this desk chair, was actually also left here, and it's kind of in that knoll style. I'm not sure they knew what they had by leaving it, but I was more than happy to snatch it up and use it as my office chair. So this is actually interesting. I pulled out the blueprints of this house in preparation for here. And so you can kind of see the layout of the whole house and the sections. There's even some notes here on the side of like which wood is in which space. So like in the living room, it says there's red oak, and in the kitchen originally they had birch cabinets. So it's just really special to have this. And it's also interesting to see, like for the laundry room area, that's now the wet bar, we weren't sure if that was actually the original intention, but it looks like it was here when this was drafted up in 1957. So this is just like a special piece of history to have, and I'm glad that the owners left that to us. This table was also an estate sale find. I ended up going when the sale was almost over, and I hadn't seen it before because it was just like covered in stuff. So I snatched this up for like $20 or something like that, and it's the perfect table. I think it's nice in an office to kind of think outside the box sometimes and not necessarily think, oh, I have to have a desk. Like maybe you could have a table or something different as well. So this is actually a really special piece. So my great-grandmother immigrated to the US from Chile, and she was a Hollywood reporter for Spanish-speaking newspapers. So in her work in 1940s Hollywood, she was actually on the board of what would become the Golden Globes. And so this was, at the time, it was run by the Hollywood Foreign Correspondents Association, and she was the president at the time. And she was actually, supposedly, according to family legend, was the one who came up with the initial design of the Golden Globe statue. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but I like to think so. So this was a certificate that they gave her after she stepped down as president of the Hollywood Foreign Correspondents Association. And I found this in my parents' basement, just kind of like a thumbtack to the wall, and I was like, I'll be taking this, and so I had it framed, and it's a very special piece to me. So speaking of grandparents, this is my grandmother at 16. So she's the daughter of Marina Cisternas, who was the president of the Hollywood Foreign Correspondents Association. My grandmother was also named Marina Cisternas, and my middle name is Cisternas, and that's kind of like my professional name that I go by. So it's just like special to have that family connection, and I actually passed that middle name on to my daughter as well. But this is my grandmother at 16, and so this is just a special piece to me that I like to have in here. When I moved into this house, it felt the most right of any house that I ever lived in. Like there was no transition period that you sometimes have with a new home where you're like, oh, I live in this place, but it's not quite right, and it's just kind of a grieving process almost. I never felt that with this home. Like it truly is my dream house. Back into the hallway, and then this is the primary bedroom. This bedroom was this not great blue color when we moved in, and so one of the first things that I did was paint it in here, but the color that I chose was just white. I was overwhelmed when we moved in, and not that there was anything wrong with white, but after a while it just started feeling a little dingy because this room, because the windows are high and narrow, it doesn't get a whole lot of great natural light. Right now it's pretty good, but in general it's not great. So again, I wanted to move in, I wanted to lean into that like moody, warm color palette that I've incorporated through the rest of the house. When I was thinking about my color palette for the rest of the house, white is not really in there. And so that's again a testament to sometimes your impulse decisions initially, you just have to make them, but then it's also okay to like change them later once you've thought about them more. So I like to keep our bedroom pretty simple. We have this old IKEA platform bed that my husband had in his bachelor days and we have kept. I like for bedding, I like a mix and match. So this is a vintage Eddie Bauer quilt that I got. The duvet cover is from IKEA. These shams are from Quince. This is thrifted. So I think kind of mixing and matching within a similar color palette is a great way to create a very unique look for your own space. Here's another really special piece for me. So I somehow became the steward of my family's like archives for photos. And so this is my grandmother, Marina, again. And this is her in Hollywood in the 60s. And this is with her Christmas tree and her little dog. And I just think it's such a great picture. And she was always so glamorous and cool. And she is definitely a huge inspiration in my life. So I love to have that in here. This is the armchair that goes with the couch that's in my office. And I will say we never use this armchair as much as we have this past year feeding my daughter in the middle of the night. Before then, it was just kind of like definitely for decoration, but this chair has really been used this year and I can say it's very comfortable and I would recommend it. So these pendant lights are just from Urban Outfitters. This is actually one of the few things from my old home that I brought with me. And again, it's like it's a context thing of how you can mix and match things. Like ordinarily, I would say this is maybe a bit more boho for my current style, but I like how it all works together here. This is a classic little cantilevered table that you can like find pretty often in vintage stores. This rug is my husband's grandparents. It's just something, again, that he just kind of like moved from place to place with, and I don't feel like it has ever looked as good in a room as it does here. The tones just kind of complement everything in here and it has a nice grounding presence. So this is the bathroom that really sold me on the house other than the living room. And I just thought it was so charming. The all pink, the wallpaper, I mean, even these like vintage lamps that I wouldn't necessarily choose for myself, but I just thought it was just so perfect in here. There's more great storage in here, so my husband actually keeps all of his clothes in here, which is nice because he wakes up really early for work, so he can come in here. There's a sliding peg door here. I found this little stool at an estate sale, and it's just like a fun moment for me to come in here and get ready for the day. The other portion of this bathroom that's really cool is there's another matching stained glass wallpaper moment in here, and again, I'm not sure who I have to thank for that, but I love to look at it every single day. It's so special. For me, home reminds me a lot of my grandparents. I would say my grandparents are like one of my biggest style inspirations on both sides. So in a way, I would say home connects me to my past. I didn't grow up with extended family around me. It was just my parents and my siblings and me. My extended family all lived in Germany. So I never have been able to be physically close with them, but I always really felt emotionally connected to them. And even though a lot of them have passed, I feel really privileged to have a lot of their things in my space. And that just makes me feel really connected to my family. And it's just another piece in really truly feeling at home in every sense of the word.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.